So we're talking about comments, and obviously there's certain stories that you get a couple of trolls in there, and it goes to the hundreds of comments very quickly. So, and I noticed that you use the number of comments as your kind of user-generated way of getting what shows up on the homepage as what's popular. Have you thought about using like a more of a dig style, or even just a hit, so this is what's popular right now, instead of the comments, or have you experimented with that? Or?
We do actually do that in KI. We use, like, we have the rank of the 4 most popular stories based on just clicking, and they usually show up on the like a side column of the page.
But that's not how you place your main stories.
Oh, that's not. Actually, I usually how I look at is I'll see what stories are getting a lot of hits, and I will rank them up accordingly. We actually have a new site, so that functionality is a little different, but it's the same thing. I'll react to what people are clicking on, and I mean, unfortunately, half the time it's something like a car wreck or something. But still, you know, if that's what people are clicking on, then I'll move it higher on the page.
So I'd like to ask a question about money and making money. If you guys feel you know, comfortable talking about that this early in the morning, and this gauche of a subject, I guess. You know, when we talk about the transition of traditional advertising dollars to, you know, from mainstream media to more digital media, obviously you all have digital properties, and some of you are wholly digital properties in the middle. There certainly isn't a balance or equilibrium between the, you know, the number of dollars in the ad industry moving from one, you know, side to the other. And then when we talk about social, let's face it, there's no money being made at all, you know, significant. So, you know, what's going to happen? I mean, and I guess this question isn't meant to be the future of news, but more specifically, because we're talking about social media, where do you see the money flowing from? Because you're active, and it certainly takes up time. You don't get more hours in your day just to do social media. So how do you monetize that, and where do you see this fitting into the business model?
I was hoping I'd pick up the answer from you guys.
I don't think that any of us really have a smart answer for that. I think a lot more of our content, from what I'm seeing on news sites and from what I'm reading around, it's going to be sponsored sections. A lot of stuff. I mean, that's what we're really moving towards. Is, you know, this you know, gardening section is brought to you by Home Depot or something like that, and we're going to get a lot more content on that, focused on that. So I guess it's going to be harder, because otherwise, you know, nobody's really figured out the web advertising thing. It's still kind of a big mystery.
And I'm not the business side, so I don't have a good answer to how they're going to make more money on the internet. We're just providing the best content we can, but the social media monetization question is one I've had to answer several times, externally and internally. And I think my answer to that is that social media, I don't understand why that has to be a money maker. Why does that, when we start a new education beat, do we say, well, how are you going to monetize that? You know, is it not just another arm of journalism? And the way I see what we're doing with Twitter, we're using it, all our beat writers are using it for journalism. We're using the Statesman account as a journalistic tool. We're seeing it as I said earlier, kind of a brand building type thing. And we're also just reaching out to the community and keeping ourselves relevant. It's hard to put a dollar figure on relevance. But that's where, you know, more and more people are getting your news, including probably everybody in this room, through social media outlets. It would be silly for us to just pretend that's not happening. And I can't say, well, we're going to make X dollars, and good thing we're making X dollars because I'm spending X time on that. I think it's just more important to say we're there, we're doing it, and we're not just pretending that the old model's still there.
And Texas Tribune's entire model comes out of this idea that why does this have to be monetized? Journalism is a public good. It's for the public, and we are a nonprofit, and so everything, we're going to be supported by philanthropy. So you get to put the dollar figure on what our worth is to you. You can be a founding member for $50, TexasTribune.org.
That's how you get to look.
And so our founder basically decided that it was an accident that journalism was a profitable commercial enterprise for the last 50 years, and so is turning it into a nonprofit, just like the Austin Ballet or NPR, or PBS, you know, or KET, anything like that.
We're definitely for profit.
Right.
just not as much for profit as we do.
Along the lines of that, like, so I don't know if you guys have read TechCrunch lately, but there was this big thing on what if the New York Times did did this.
Right.
And talking about like, I mean, look in this building that we're at, the parking lot, the space of land, the cost of running that alone is high. But if you're like Elisa, you guys probably work from home and like are more mobile and you don't have those overhead costs. Can you see that difference in your editor?
Well, the whole, what if the New York Times did this is exactly kind of what
What you
Texas
guys
Tribune
did,
did
yeah.
in Texas, which was take, you know, a top journalist from various newspaper organizations, the ones that were highly productive, you know, and created this smaller newsroom that's supposed to be more nimble and agile. You know, we have overhead costs. We are going to have a full-fledged office and all that stuff. But, yeah, the idea is to, when you're starting over, because a lot of these legacy media organizations, and I worked at Belo and Hearst Argyll and all these major media conglomerates, so I know, I mean, a lot of them, you're kind of set in certain ways because of contracts and because this is the way you always did it. And you'd have to blow everything up to start over again, you know? But here, we're starting from scratch, so there's a little bit more room to move and to be flexible.
And yeah, so much of our revenue is still print. I mean,
Right.
it would be hard for us to. I mean, it is easy to look at this and go, "Wow, look at all this overhead," but it's also a good revenue generator. I mean, it still is, and so it'd be hard to kind of just say, "Oh, well, let's just scrap all that and go to an online news organization," because it wouldn't support the staff that we have now, and we have a big news gathering staff right now that we are supporting.
And those really old, expensive presses are running almost all the time now. And we're not just publishing, printing us, but lots of different publications around here. New York Times, the Waco paper, the Austin Chronicle, the Daily Texan now.
Just about every print circular you possibly get stuck into your doorway, probably. Any other questions over there?
Earlier, Rob, you asked, how do you monetize relevance, which inspired my question, which is, how do you measure relevance? And I know you talked a little bit about qualitatively crowdsourcing and just having a real-time finger on the pulse of what your readership is interested in. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about both qualitative and quantitatively, what does success in social media mean to your organizations from a metrics perspective and measurement?
I'll give it a non-quantitative version. In news, especially in sports, I got yelled at more than any other job I've had at the paper from readers. People love to call their sports section and bitch at us about we didn't get the Dodgers box score in or didn't give enough coverage to Westlake High School or whatever it was. And when we would provide updates via Twitter on games, especially if it was during the workday, if it's like a tournament game or something, Big 12 basketball tournament, we're doing something. Invariably, at the end, you get all these thank yous, from people. Thanks for, I was following your updates from Saudi Arabia or wherever, where they couldn't get the game. Or thank you so much for doing this. And we're not used to hearing that. We just get the complaints. So, from a qualitative standpoint, it's nice to get that feedback.
And I favorite on the Statesman every time anybody says anything positive about the Statesman. And there's so many now. And when I was letters editor, I never got a, wow, the Statesman's doing a great job. And, in my entire career, we never saw that. I'm sure John never seen it quite like that. But there is a lot of kind of gratitude that we're in the space and that we're kind of doing it right, I guess. But then as far as trying to quantify it, I think the best way I could do that is right now, we had this incredible growth on the internet for much of this decade, and it was partly due to the fact that people were getting on broadband, people were getting more on the web than they are now. It was growing and growing and growing, and so we were naturally seeing the growth. Now it's kind of doing this, and that's not just for us, but for everybody, because we have huge saturation in this market. Everybody's on broadband in Austin. Everybody's kind of found their favorite sites now. You're not going to get all these new users. But through social media, I've been able to draw in people who've never been to the site before. And I can quantify that by looking at user registration of people that are coming in. I mean, it's all new people for the most part. It's and these new unique users are kind of the holy grail for us right now, is finding new people. I mean, our only hope is either find somebody who didn't pay attention to news at all, but they were kind of into Twitter, like, oh, look, I can find out about news now. Or they got their news from another source and we're kind of stealing them away. And, there is some, competition still. And so that is, kind of like, I guess, the best way I could quantify